This is Climate Watch. I'm Fei Fei. In China, the two mountains concept says lucid waters and lush mountains are as valuable as gold and silver. In other words, a healthy environment is the real foundation for prosperity. And I want to see what that looks like in everyday life. So, on my trips across China this year, I've always carved out an hour or sometimes a whole day to meet the people working with nature and see how this idea has taken root. What does it really take to turn green mountains and clear waters into gold and silver? What can it teach us about climate resilience and building better cities? What if the secrets to protect our cities from floods, keeping wildlife alive, and helping local communities thrive was sitting quietly in the wetlands right outside our door? Where land meets sea in southeastern China lies Quanzhou Bay. It's a place steeped in history and also alive with biodiversity. They call it the ancient port of 1,000 years. Over 1,200 years ago, ships loaded with tea, porcelain, and silk set sail from here, bound for ports across the world. Today, UNESCO recognized Quanzhou as a World Heritage Site. They call it an emporium of the world. One of its landmarks is the Luoyang Bridge, stretching across the wide estuary of the Luoyang River. And when I arrived, it wasn't just the bridge that caught my eye, but the long green stretches of the mangroves lining both sides. At the Quanzhou Bay Wetland Reserve Center, I met Chen Ruohai, a senior researcher. He unrolled a map of the bay and began tracing the waterways with his finger.
As you can see from this map, Quanzhou is home to two major rivers, the Luoyang and the Jinjiang, whose estuaries flow into Quanzhou Bay. The area where these rivers meet the sea is especially rich in biodiversity. That's why the estuary was designated for protection. It's home to mangroves, a wide variety of bird species, and rare animals like the Chinese white dolphin and Chinese sturgeon.
Chen told me the reserve has 3 core zones. These are places where people aren't allowed to set foot. One protects the Chinese white dolphin and sturgeon. Another shelters migratory and resident birds. And this one that I was visiting safeguards mangroves.
This area contains native mangroves as well as restored patches. We have planted large stretches of local species. The biggest restoration that covers more than 7,000 mu, up from just 257 mu before. The native patch is right over there, behind Yuguang Middle School.
But 20 years ago, this scene didn't exist. The shoreline was bare, the mangroves almost entirely gone, pushed out by fishing and other human activity, also left the river water murky. That started to change in 2003 when the wetland reserve was created. Since then, cleaner water and large-scale replanting have brought the forest back to life. Today, 460 hectares of mangroves stretch across the estuary. The only way to get close to the trees is by boat when the tide comes in. On the dock, I met Liu Xingming. He's a fisherman who's been working these waters for more than 50 years.
I've been fishing in the Luoyang River since I was 15. The sea was my livelihood, but when pollution hit, I couldn't sell my catch anymore. It was worthless.
We pushed off in Liu's boat, joined by Ni Jinfeng, Deputy Director of the local Natural Resources Department. He's in charge of restoring and managing the mangroves. Ni told me the reserve depends on fishermen like Liu, on their knowledge of the tides, the mud flats, and the channels. They also hire their boats to help patrol the mangrove zones and plant them.
The mangroves here are mostly Candlia obovita and Aegisrus corniculatum, with some Avicennia marina.
As we near the forest, the mangroves looked less like towering trees and more like dense bushes, their roots stretching into the mud like giant claws. Liu smiled as he looked out at the green expanse.
Things are better now. The smell is gone. The harvests are bigger. More fish, shrimp, oysters, and the villagers are earning more.
Ni leaned over and added that I should come back in October or November.
Quanzhou Bay is a stopover for migratory birds. Come then, and the mangroves are covered in white egrets. When they all take off at once, it's breathtaking.
Even now, I spotted a lone white bird, probably a egret, lifting off against the deep green of the mangroves. Professor Li Yuhong of Huaqiao University is one of the first scientists to study the mangroves at the Luoyang River estuary. She told me they've seen clear changes in recent decades. The trees are slowly creeping north, little by little.
The
two species, Aegisrus corniculatum and Avicennia marina, naturally grow no further north than this side in China and on this side of the Pacific. As global temperatures rise, they're slowly creeping further north. Mangroves need a specific balance of water, warmth, and salinity. This area isn't just a wildlife haven. It's an important reference for scientists studying biodiversity and tracking how species shifted their range as the climate warms.
Later, standing on the Luoyang Bridge, I looked out over the water, the mangroves, and the communities nearby. And I wondered, for a port city, the bay is prime real estate for shipping. So how to make sure the reserves well protected while Quanzhou still maintain its edge on trade? And that, Professor Li told me, they've been working to involve communities in conservation works, like how Ni's department work with local fishermen on mangroves management.
People have lived here for over 1,000 years. This is the site of an ancient port. That makes conservation challenging. Many reserves are far from towns, but here, several communities sit right on the estuary. Managing the area means working closely with residents, helping them understand why protection matters and encouraging their participation.
Communities have lived side by side with wetlands for centuries in Quanzhou. It's a relationship of both affection and friction. Locals like Liu Xinming enjoy the cleaner water and richer marine life, but some grumble about one unexpected side effect: more mosquitoes. Well, I can relate. I don't live near any mangroves, but I've spent plenty of time in inland wetlands. Whether it's a boat ride across a lake or a walk along the riverbank, I've met my share of wildlife, mosquitoes included. Usually, I just laugh it off. It's a price I'm willing to pay for a healthier environment and greater biodiversity. But is it a price worth paying? Wetlands are nature's filtration systems. They quietly clean our water, buffer floods, and protect shorelines from storms. It sounds simple enough now, but it took some painful lessons for society to fully understand their value. For China, one of those lessons came in the summer of 1998. According to the United Nations, from July to August that year, 60 days of flooding across China affected more than 200 million people, 1/5 of China's population. Health clinics, schools, water supplies, and critical infrastructure including roads, bridges, and irrigation systems were destroyed. And by the end of August, direct economic damage exceeded $20 billion. The causes were complex: heavy rainfalls, climate change, but officials and experts like Yuan Xingzhong from Chongqing University also pointed to another factor: the loss of wetlands.
Take Dongting Lake and Poyang Lake along the Yangtze River, for example. They play a major role in flood management, reducing flood peaks, controlling floods, and slowing the flow. But many of our lakes were reclaimed and enclosed. Large lakes became smaller. That's why we were hit by record floods along the Yangtze in 1998. We lacked the space to slow down and hold back floodwaters. The disappearance of these spaces means that flood disasters became more intense.
That disaster forced China to rethink its relationship with water. Since the early 2000s, the country has poured resources into wetland restoration, into places like the Quanzhou Bay Wetland Reserve I visited. And today, China has more than 2,200 wetland nature reserves. And the effort isn't limited to nature reserves. In cities as well, wetlands provide multiple benefits. During storms, they absorb excess rainwater, reducing urban flooding. Their abundant vegetation filters domestic and industrial waste, improving water quality. China is now using wetlands to design more sustainable, resilient, and beautiful cities. More than 900 national wetland parks have been built, and 90% of them open to the public for free. And China has the largest number of wetland cities accredited by the Ramsar Convention. Professor Yuan has been part of this redesign of how people and water can coexist. For more than 2 decades, he's restored mangroves along China's southern coast, designed wetland parks for cities and villages, and revived wetlands along the Yangtze River. Now, he's turning his attention to small and micro wetlands. They are often overlooked. There are duck ponds in a neighborhood, or a man-made creek in a backyard. But Yuan says they are vital for cities' adaptation to extreme weather.
Today, we face serious challenges like global climate change, whose most visible effects are the frequent extremes of prolonged drought or intense rain and flooding. In such times, sponge city projects centered on micro and small wetlands become crucial. We need to consider how to respond to climate change by strengthening the resilient design of these wetlands.
He envisions integrating small wetlands directly into urban planning because something as small as a pond can be easily filled up.
We need to emphasize multifunctional integration, combining flood regulation, purification of surface runoff, biodiversity conservation, carbon sequestration, and even landscape enhancement. By coupling all these functions together, we can comprehensively improve the ecosystem services they provide. The key is not to see them as isolated points, but as part of the city's overall ecological network.
And Yuan believes we are only beginning to tap their potential.
We've restored so many wetlands and protected the existing ones. Now the question is, how can we ensure they bring us ecological benefits so more people can enjoy what wetlands have to offer? This is what we mean by the transformation of wetland ecological values, finding ways to enable more and high-quality wetlands to produce more and better ecological products. At this stage, this may be one of the most important tasks for wetland conservation and the sustainable use of wetland resources.
So, what are these ecological products? Well, they are all around us. They can be as simple as the oysters Liu Xingming raises in the Luoyang River, or the mental and physical well-being locals enjoy from time spent in wetland parks. When I went to the city of Lhasa in Xizang, a retiree told me he often walks the entire loop around the lake in the Lalu Wetland Park.
The air is really good and so is the environment. The scenery is at its best in July and August. It usually takes about 4 hours to walk a full circle around this lake. Sometimes I come on my own, sometimes with my family.
And by the way, the city of Lhasa is now also a wetland city listed by the Ramsar Convention. When I visited the city of Guiyang back in June for another Climate Watch episode, I went to the Guanshanhu Park. The park, covering over 300 hectares with 2 big lakes, is now an online sensation for marathoners in the city. Director Cao Yang of the local environmental authority told me this park is one of their ecological products.
In
our fast-paced urban lives, especially during breaks or after meals, we all need a place to relax and unwind. Parks, greenways, and even small neighborhood parks provide these ecological products by offering residents the experience of opening the window to see green and stepping outside into nature.
Cao also said because of the good environment of the Guanshanhu district that he's working in, businesses and people have been flocking in over the past 20 years. Its population swelled to more than 700,000, making it practically the new city center of Guiyang. This, he believed, is the societal and economic benefits of a healthy environment bringing to cities. And there's more yet to be discovered. Thank you for listening to this episode of Climate Watch. My trip to Quanzhou was actually planned for another story for this podcast, which will be coming up very soon, on how oysters can help meet our sustainability goals. If you're curious, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss it. And if you have any thoughts about this episode, leave a review on your podcast platform or find me on Substack under the newsletter Rivers and Mountains. Bye for now.